All right. Enough talking about dogs in chat. Trying to convince Dorky to let me get a dachshund puppy, but she likes old crusty dogs to save them all. So who knows where we'll go. The format we're doing today, well, new microphone first and foremost. Spent a little bit of time working on the live stream. Found a little time to do that. And the format that I want to try going forward, my goal is just to answer more questions, and I always answer a lot of questions, but basically put a question up that I'm going to start talking about. Then I'm going to answer questions that come through. It could be questions you guys have after I've talked a little bit. Could be something completely random. And that's just the way I'm going to do it. So today we're talking about how often should you test your water. Now I got this question from comments. So if you leave comments down below on videos or this live stream or on the community page, a lot of us here at the co-op are reading those, and we're getting ideas for blog articles, we're getting ideas for videos to make, we're getting ideas for topics for live streams, right? And so that's where I got this one. Now, when it comes to changing water, I've done some videos on why do we change water and things like that, and those are 20+ minute spiels that you can listen to and hopefully learn something from. But as far as I'm concerned, you can't really check your water too often. Now, it used to be time and kind of cost prohibitive. Well, time or cost, not really both. If you had a drop, kit, it takes a long time to test your water. Like an API master test kit, to truly test water and get a few parameters and really get a good look at that water takes maybe 10 minutes. Maybe a little more even, depending on how you do. And then if it was test strips or something like that, they were prohibitively expensive. I know when I visited a store, they had like a 4-pack for $8, and I was like, whoa, that's crazy. So, but now, like with our test strips or others, 100 packs or more, you're starting to get to see some of that economy of scale that makes testing all the time fairly economical. So I also don't like to waste time though. So some other people have chimed in. I thought, I don't have the quote in front of me, but a member of the channel said like, well, really it should be the newer the tank is, the more you test, and as the results get more and more repeatable and stable, the less you should have to. And I think that's a good summary of how most fish tanks go. When they're new and you don't know a lot about them, and not just new to the hobby, I'm talking new, like if I set up, like when we set up, for a great example, here we go. When we set up the 1450 gallon for Murphy, the new store tank, right? We're going to be testing that thing several times a week before we actually get fish in it. After we add fish in it, we're going to be testing it several times a week as we're adding plants, as we're dialing in CO2, as we're dialing in fertilizer, as we're adding more fish, as we start feeding full force, right? So right now we might feed Murphy a giant handful of clams, right? And the filter handles all that, or the system. And I should get away from saying the filter handles that. The system, the total ecosystem handles that no problem. But if we move them over and we put them into this new bigger tank, a lot of times you would say like, so right now Murphy's in a 360 gallon aquarium. We're going to a 1450 gallon aquarium. If you put in the same amount of food, you would think, well, that aquarium is huge, it's going to be fine. The reality is we'd get an ammonia spike and we'd be in trouble real fast, even though it's nearly 4 to 5 times as big, right? That's because we don't have enough bacteria, we don't have a well-developed ecosystem where we've got algae and we've got plants and we've got different bacteria working for us. We don't know our water change schedule. When we set something like that up for us, we're looking at, well, how often should we change water? Is it daily? Is it 5%? Is it 10%? So like right now in the 360 gallon, right? We change about 15% every single day. Well, we're taking that same fish, we're putting in a tank that's 5 times as big for simple math, right? If we change 15% of that water, we're changing way more water. All of a sudden, we're changing like 175 gallons of water every day. The reality is we probably, with a bunch of testing, can go, oh, we only need to change like 5% of that water every day. Or maybe it's 10% every 3 days, right? Depending on the load we're going to put in there. But if we put a bunch more fish, again, we might have to change that. Now, how do we know all of this? Testing. Looking at the amount of waste buildup, whether it's ammonia, nitrite, nitrate. We want to see our pH levels crashing, because as a result of feeding food, pH can move. And when that happens, if you don't change enough water, you can get crashes. Now, we use things like crushed coral to help buffer against that, and all the clams that are in Murphy's tank, the shells, they naturally do that anyway. So that's kind of nice. Now, one of the problems we can run into, let's say we do run a ton of water through there because we've got the fish load so high. Our water is very soft out of the tap, low pH, not a lot of minerals. So if we change too much water, the crushed coral or the clams actually can't dissolve fast enough to keep it buffered. So we need to learn about that system, and that's where testing. So we might be testing, every single day for the first month, especially because you have a very, I don't know what to call it, like not high value, but like it's under the people's eye. We really gonna have a lot of people watching. We really want to make sure nothing goes wrong. And if something was to go wrong at a store like that, you're disproportionately like, oh, I thought they were professional. I thought they'd be better than that. And the reality is everybody gets busy during Christmas, and you think it's fine. The only way to know is testing. And that's, someone in the chat earlier had said, oh, I tested and it saved my bacon because I had some guppies and the nitrates were in the hundreds, right? And that's what I think is very important when it comes to how often should we test our water. And that is, can we make it easy? If I can get results in like a minute, I'm much more likely to do it than 5 minutes, right? Because like, oh, well, maybe you're on the way out of your room with your fish tanks and you're just like, well, that fish looks a little off. Yeah, but I should get to bed. I got to brush my teeth and go to bed. If it's just this and 1 minute later, you're much more likely to do that action and go, oh, wow, yeah, okay, tomorrow I got to do a water change. That's crazy. I did not see it going up that fast, right? Whereas at test kit, too often in my own personal experience, I go, yeah, I'll test that tomorrow. And then I just don't, right? I'm like, yeah, it's probably fine. And so testing more often can put your mind at ease. And then also it will start building associations. Like, yeah, I did see a lot of algae growth. Oh, that's because I was building up in nitrates, right? So in a perfect world, new tanks, you're testing very frequently. And that, let's say you're brand new to the hobby and it's a brand new tank, you might test once a day, every day for 30 days. But then at some point in your hobby or that tank's life, it's going to start going, well, I tested it yesterday, it was at 20 parts per million nitrates. Tested today, it's at 20. Tested tomorrow, it's at 20. Tested the next day, 20, right? Pretty soon, it's looking the same every time you do it. That's the first sign of, all right, I probably don't need to test every day. I'm going to start testing every third day. And pretty soon you test on Sunday. Okay, it's 20. I test on Wednesday. Okay, it's 20. I test on Sunday again. Okay, it's 20. All right, maybe I'm only going to start testing Sundays now. Test Sunday. And as you keep seeing the pattern being the same every time, that means your ecosystem is better developed. It means your system is more stable than it was. It means, you're kind of dialed in. You can predict, let's say you go 3 Sundays in a row and it's at 20, you can go, I bet you it's going to be 20 this 4th Sunday. And maybe it is, and the 5th and the 6th, right? So then you might be going, well, I only need to test once a month. And that's where your goal is. And pretty soon you're testing once a month. And that's basically as infrequent as I like to get. I like to test once a month. That clues me in because sometimes it slips out of your mind of like, maybe you went on vacation, someone else fed. Maybe your fish are getting bigger. Maybe they had some babies. Maybe you switched up foods. Maybe you didn't change quite as much water as you normally did. And you can catch all of those with that once a month test of like, oh yeah, we're starting, normally I'm always at 20. This time I was at 50. Okay, well maybe I should make a change. And that change might be, maybe you change foods. You go to a cleaner food. Or maybe you feed less food. Or maybe you go, you know what? This Saturday I need to stop being lazy and I'm going to go sell some of these fish to my local fish store. Or whatever that looks like, right? And you make some kind of adjustment. You could also be making adjustments you don't realize are changing it. Like, well, you were really proactive and last Saturday you trimmed all your plants and it looks amazing. But we didn't realize you reduced the plant biomass by half, and 2 weeks later, you've got nitrates building up because they're not eating them as fast, right? And if you don't test, like what can happen a lot of times, my tank's been running great for 6 months. I don't even need to test. My water is always perfect. Then you do that. Oh, I trim a bunch of plants. I changed food. I missed a water change. And you start getting into these scenarios where you're having problems with fish and then you test it, it's way out of whack. So that's why I don't like to go more than a month of just quick little dip, take a look. And honestly, I do a bunch at a time. I will just dip, 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 like 5 tanks in a row, put them all in a line, put them next to my chart. And I'm just looking for anomalies. I don't care whether it says 10 or 25 parts per million nitrate. I don't care. I want to make sure that it's saying 0 nitrite, right? I care a little bit about buffer and hardness, but not even that much. And I care about pH. I'm kind of looking for a very top level macro view. Which one of my aquariums stands out as, ooh, that's not what I expected. And so getting to once a month is where I like to be. And from there, most of my tanks settle in and they hopefully run like clockwork. Now, I've been testing a lot lately, and that's because I'm auto-injecting fertilizers. I'm playing with the water change schedule. I went from changing water every day to now we're changing water every 3 days. Well, that's not true. I went from changing water every day and going, this is just too much. My tanks are always at 0 nitrates, and that's not a good thing for planet tanks, to let's do it once a week, right? So I did once a week, and still they were sitting at 0. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't really want to change less. And the reason I didn't want to change less water was because evaporation's happening. Because of all the dehumidifiers we run and all the open top tanks or ponds, the water level is going down low. And I don't like that because I'm like, I don't want them to have less swim space and it doesn't look good to me. So then I thought, okay, well, I need to keep it filled up, but I'm having a hard time getting nutrients into my water, basically easy green or fertilizer. So that's where we went to auto dosing, mixing with the water that's going into the ponds, easy green. So again, I'm still testing a bunch though, because I want to make sure that we're now automatically putting in fertilizer. I don't want it to, me to dip it in and go, oh my gosh, we're 200 parts per million nitrates. I'm trying to get it so that it levels out at sitting between 20 and 40 nitrates all the time. No matter what day of the week it is, I want it to sit there no matter how many fish are in there. And that's a hard thing to do because some fish will have 200 fish, or some ponds will have 200 fish, and some will only have 5. So that's a hard system for me, and I'm testing water and I'm writing it down in the videos. If you see the blue tape on certain tanks and totes, that's because I'm writing down different tests. So, oh, this week it read at this, okay? 3 days later it read at this. This week it read at this. Meanwhile, my goalposts are always moving. So fish might breed, plants get bigger. The only constants I have are lighting because it's on a timer and my water change / fertilizing because it's on timers too. And so I play with that and make adjustments over time and go, well, how is this charting out over the course of a month or two? And I'm only about 5 weeks in, so I don't have that whole picture yet. So I'm still testing a bunch and keeping an eye. And if I see something off, I lost a fish, or maybe a fish looks a little sick or anything like that, I test it and try and reaffirm, do what I think's going on, is that's what's going on by the test. And if that lines up, I go, good. And if it doesn't, I go, oh, I need to learn about that because clearly I thought this was one thing and it's another. So, I obviously I love test strips. That's why we developed these ones and we made them cheap. I had the ability, I could have matched other ones out there and only did 100 or even 25, and we could have made a ton of money. But I do strongly believe in testing your water often, and if I could remove, and I feel like I've done that. I've basically removed the money aspect. 200 tests for less than $20 at that speed, by the way, because drop kits are very cheap as well over that many tests, but they're not quick. It basically has made it so that we are the excuse now. If I don't test my water, it's because I'm lazy and not because I don't have time right now, I don't have this. And so it's actually helped me save quite a few fish, honestly. And, I hope that it's doing that for other people too, because it's, I don't know, testing water, very important. Sometimes you got to test all the time. Sometimes you can have tanks and systems that you rarely test. Like my pond, for instance, I might test that 3 or 4 times a year. I kind of test it going, into pond season before I start feeding. Is there anything I need to do? I test it middle of summer because now we've got lots of evaporation. The temperatures are different. I've been feeding heavy. I test it going out of winter or out of summer, right? We're going into winter. I'm going to turn off food. Anything I need to do before I let these guys just chill for the winter. And then I might test it one time during the winter, mostly because I wander down being curious, going, I wonder how cold it is. I wonder what this water looks like when we're in the middle of winter. So it's more of a curious thing and not a, I think I need to be doing that. And, you know, I still get the results either way. You know, that pond runs very, very acidic. And, you know, my goal is long term to do a lot more cleanup. We did a lot of cleanup on the outside of that pond, got rid of a lot of sticker bushes and that kind of stuff, built the drain bigger, put in screens and that kind of stuff to prevent fish from escaping. Now we need to not worry, that's the wrong word. We need to work on, I want to get power to the pond so I can get these big air stones going to get the muck moving. And so we can overflow some water and get basically that muck leaving the system. And when I can get a lot of the muck out of there, then I can worry about, and I have power, I could then make a little filter, if you will. I just want to run some water over like some crushed coral and help buffer that water over time. That's what I'm looking to do. So, all right. I've stopped testing all the time. I've stopped testing all the time over the years. I just go on the fish in the ecosystem. I can tell if something changes. I definitely have been in those states. I also have gotten to states where I don't know the outcome, or I think I know the outcome and I don't know it. Like one of the biggest ones that was really eye-opening for me probably 8-10 years ago now was how low oxygen levels got in the morning, because plants release oxygen during the day when the lights are on. Everyone looks happy and they're loving life. But then the lights go out, everything goes to sleep, and they're releasing CO2 and using oxygen. And so in the morning, you could actually be very, very, very low on oxygen. And no, these test strips don't test for that. It's like a $200 meter, an oxygen sensor or reader. But again, thinking I know a lot, and then you can always set yourself straight by testing and going, geez, everyone looked to be doing good by my standards, but I knew that I knew we could do better. My camera's going crazy with my hands. Yeah, that's my next thing to work on is either a fixed focus or maybe even just changing the camera and dumbing it down a little bit so it doesn't do these, focus karate chops. All right. Besides crushed coral, what are the best ways to keep KH up when breeding large numbers of snails? It seems that they're lowering the calcium too fast. When I'm really trying to get a snail farm going, I like to use lots of wonder shells for calcium. I like to use lots of Zoomeds plankton banquet blocks. And then I've also been known to use Tums, right? Now, Tums used to be super cheap and easy to get, but with COVID, that's not always the case, as we've found at the grocery store lately. In terms of buffering KH, it's very difficult to buffer KH without modifying pH in some way. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's pretty difficult. The cheapest way to do it would be a little bit of baking soda. You can buy a giant container, and it takes the smallest little bit to really move pH in KH. And so much so that like a pinch into a 20-gallon tank takes you from like 6-8 pH to 8 and like the highest amount of buffer you can get. Now, crushed coral does that much slower. The process I would probably do there is I would use crushed coral, and then I would also supplement with basically feeding blocks, wonder shells, that kind of stuff in there to get them calcium. Now, when it comes to snails in particular, they need to have kind of calcium in the water and non-acidic water so their shells don't dissolve, but they also need to be eating some calcium. So maybe get yourself like a crab cuisine, maybe some of the shrimp food from Extreme. Something's got to have some calcium in it so that they're getting it both ways. You're putting it in the water and you're also letting them ingest it so they can build a good shell, but then also not let it get worn away by water parameters. What category of equipment isn't keeping up with technology or trends in the hobby? All of it. If we really look at pretty much everything that's in this hobby, we have the capability to pretty much make it indestructible. What holds us back from that? I ask myself that all the time. What is holding us back from making the perfect filter, the perfect heater, the perfect air pump, the perfect light? And the answer is money. We have the ability to make all of these things, but the average person won't pay it. And great example, someone I know, they had a family member pass away. And so usually when that happens in my life, what happens is it trickles through the grapevine to, hey, you want this fish tank? It's free. And then there's whatever fish are assorted with that, right? And this tank happened to be, it looks like a oak trimmed 20-gallon-ish tank. You know, we didn't take measurements or anything, with like 3 goldfish that looked to be this big, and they were being fed, from what I can tell, because the person passed away. The thing that's sitting on there is some Tetra goldfish flakes. Now, the fish look super healthy. They look a little cramped, but for the most part, it looked like someone's pet that was being taken care of by someone, right? We all know, like, wait, 3 goldfish this big in a 20-gallon? Oh my gosh. Goldfish flake? Oh my gosh, right? We don't know the whole story, but that is the hobby. And I told my wife is like, we as hobbyists, the people that, watch a YouTube video, for as many of us as there are, right? Let's say there's a few million of us. There are tens of millions of others who will never watch a YouTube video, won't get the education, will just get that cursory education when they bought the pet initially. And that's the majority of it. So when we look at an air pump, a light, something like that, they're being designed for that customer that will purchase them, and they're going to sell millions and millions and millions of those. They're not really being designed for the person that wants to spend $112 on a heater, but will be in this hobby for 40 years, right? Now, there are some other cursory things of like, if that heater never breaks, they never get another sale. There's all those things too. But I think we have that technology to pretty much make things as close to fail-proof as possible, or at least much longer life cycles. But the cost goes up, and there's not enough of us that want that everlasting gobstopper of a heater to make it affordable. Because if we, any product, if I go, hey, I'd like to, I think the first batch of these, we bought 1,000 of them, right? And then the next batch was 2,000. And I think the batch after that was 4,000. But I guarantee you they'd be cheaper if I started out with, I'd like to buy 1 million of these, and then 2 million, and then 4 million, right? And the reality is, I can't market to enough people. To sell 4 million of these, I got to be in those normal people households, and I don't reach them. They don't watch YouTube. I'm not in a Petco or a PetSmart, those types of things. So I think almost everything is behind where we could be. I try to bridge that gap a little bit, slowly but surely. Over the years, you've seen us bring a product or two. We make these little baby steps forward, and other companies are doing it too. I do believe that, like, what we've done with sponge filters, because I love them, and other people too, not just me, but it has helped change the hobby so that a PetSmart does now carry a sponge filter, right? And I think that may have taken 6 or 7 years, but maybe if we keep that pressure on for the next 20 years, maybe we will see those, leaps forward that we're looking for. Now, also keep in mind, technology is not always a good thing. So a good example would be the flue wall lights. I do love them, used them a ton, but there are a big demographic of people that don't want the light to connect to their phone. They don't want all the bells and whistles, and myself kind of included. It was fun to play with it, look at all these things it can do, but do you know what I use this light to do? Turn on and off. That's all I use, right? And maybe I dim it down, but you can dim it down without using the app. So, but there's a lot of people that get frustrated because it's not analog controls, and it's not resetting at the right time, it's not doing this, not doing that, and it inflates the cost. I don't care what anyone says. Like the flue wall light, take away the app, take away some of the features, could be a lot, maybe not a lot cheaper, but could be 20% cheaper. Pick a number, right? I got the squeakiest chair on the planet, by the way, right now. It could be cheaper. And so for the person like me, not using those bells and whistles, I'm paying a premium for something I'm not using. So like our light won't we're taking out that premium and trying to get that. At the end of the day, if you eat with a fork, you just need a really good fork. You don't need a fork with a laser beam on it. Like, look, I can see it before I put my fork into that piece of meat, right? There's some things that just go above and beyond, and not that nobody. I mean, there's 12 people in the chat that go, yeah, I do need a fork with a laser on it. That would be amazing. But the majority of us go, yeah, just a fork that we can use, and then we put it in the dishwasher and it's fine, where you have to hand wash your laser fork. I already know that's going to be like the latest quote, laser forks. We need laser forks. I can already see it. Use your laser fork, you stick it into the zucchini, and you feed your plecos with it. Laser forks. I finally picked up some extra large Bolivian rams today and couldn't resist them. They're chunky. Any breeding tips? For the most part, I would say don't go too crazy on bloodworms. You can go real crazy on brine shrimp, but just lots of good foods, feed them a ton, and they'll start laying eggs on leaves and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's really basically good food. Make sure there's no predators or like aggressors in there, and time. But that's almost how you breed everything. There are a few that are like, okay, specific pH. These guys aren't that. They're just make them really happy. Really, really happy fish. And if they're not breeding after you think you're making them really happy, usually the difference is more food. So. All right. I'm sure there's some other questions and stuff by now. Thank you to all the people that are becoming members, by the way. That's helpful. I've actually got a meeting with YouTube on Thursday, not directly about memberships, but with my YouTube partner manager and a new feature I want to try that I demoed 2 years ago. Now it's supposedly gotten better, and I think it can make us have a better show. So, you guys do help fund what we do. I did see at least one person left it on the survey when they quit the club that they didn't feel appreciated. I would like to apologize to that person if you're watching today. That's, probably on me for not saying thank you enough or coming across as sincere. Sometimes I'm rushed. Trust me, I don't know how much time in each day that I do sit here and think, how crazy is it that random fish nerd has made it and been able to make a business, and there's people that support what we want to do, and I got to spend a meeting today trying to figure out, can we make sweatpants to give away for members at the Orlando show? Like, that's literally what I got to do. I got paid to think, and then I got to make jokes about, wouldn't it be hilarious if across the butt it says Mulm? Or someone else that is also a member in here said, what if we printed it so it looks like you wiped duckweed off right outside the pockets of these sweatpants? Or, I just think it'd be kind of cool if you're a NERM or a club member. I know a lot of times on those Saturdays when I get up and I'm watching a talk, I'm definitely rocking sweatpants. I mean, who am I kidding? I'm rocking sweatpants right now, from Costco. But we're seeing what we can do, what we can get going in the meantime. The shirt we're giving away at Orlando is going to be sweet. We plan to give it away at a few other conventions as well. We're going to print 3,000 of them. I know upwards of maybe 7,000 people will show up to that show. However, I've yet to ever run out of a shirt at a show, and these shirts are not cheap. In fact, Jared, who is at least a subscriber, might be a member too. I think we're going with that company because they're actually based out of Orlando, and they're going to deliver the show for free. So that's one more closer step and one less logistic we have to figure out. Because last time I shipped 1,000 shirts, it was like $800 to ship 1,000 shirts. So if we can save that cost, it allows us to put more and more into the stuff we're giving away. At this point, if we do sweatpants as well, we'll be around $20,000 in stuff we're giving away, which, we do try. You guys all pay money, and I realize some of you are like, I'll never get to go to a show. There's no way we can do it for everybody, but for the most part, we try to spread it around, and hopefully we'll do a show near you. You'll get some. I've got some ideas on how could we get some of this swag to people. We know we have people in Africa. We know we have people in countries that it's unlikely we'll do a show anytime soon. How can we take care of those people? We're working on all of those things. We're thinking up ideas. We're thinking about how can we send someone a $12 t-shirt that costs $40 to get there, but there's only 6 of them. Let's just do it. all of those types of things, and it helps. Even if you don't have if you're not in the United States, if you make an account on our website and you link it up, that still gives demographics of like, yeah, we got 6 people in Japan. Let's take care of that. Let's figure out how we're going to do that. And so the more of you guys that actually link your accounts and sign up and do all that, the more we can dial it in for everybody. So I am genuinely thankful, though, to not only just members, fans and customers and employees. How lucky are we that we have Candy, we have Randy, we have Robert, we have my wife, we have so many wonderful people in the warehouse and the store. And we have, another member joined us. Their first day was yesterday, right? And we're hiring another for the warehouse as well, I believe. And, so I do spend time each day, whether I properly convey that when I'm live, probably not. But each day there is that, like, I cannot believe this is still a thing. So, will the co-op ever be in California? 100% yes, Brian. Being that Zenzo, in charge of events and the membership and the community and all that, we contract him for that. Definitely one of the things is find us a spot. Well, it's actually 2 spots in California. We need to do kind of like a north show and a south show. But we're also trying to weave it in. We're going to do an event at Twin City Guppies. We've got a lot of other people that want us to be at their local club or their local shows. And the reality is I don't want to break down and get burnt out in traveling and that kind of stuff. And anything more than about once every 6 to 8 weeks of being out of town is rough on me. So we're trying to go, okay, well, how can we split this out and ramp things up? And there's still, we're still possibly planning a Peru trip to do, some content. I definitely want to, do some other stuff. I'm talking with Chris Luke up the Shrimp King. Hopefully he'll be coming over for Aquashella. Good news is it Danny's Aquariums? Yeah. I know Danny by his, I just always call him Danny. But Danny's Aquariums is going to be coming from the Netherlands. I believe that's where he lives. Yeah. He does some work for us. He's actually the one that does all the timestamps and videos, if you guys didn't know that. So he's been doing that for maybe a couple years now. But anyway, he's coming to Aquashella on his own accord. We're not paying for him, so don't be like, oh, you guys are so nice. Like, no, he's paying for himself. He wants to come to the United States. He hasn't been here. He's going to stay like a whole week in Orlando, so it's going to be awesome. First time I'll get to meet him in person. And I'm guessing he'll show up around the booth. And so, if you're a saltwater nerd, you might already know who Danny's Aquariums is. And that's just one more guy that's going to hang out. So yeah, lots of events coming up. We're doing what we can, trying to gear up, trying to get shirts, trying to get swag, trying to get stuff going. Will we see the Aquariumcoop green jet flying the skies one day? Like Corey get around for meetings daily? I don't know. I've thought about that. Like, how cool would it be to what if you made that level? And then also I know the closer I get to that level, which I'm not close to that level, but every inch I get closer to that, the more I realize I don't want that. I don't want to be, famous enough to be able to afford a private jet, because I know you lose all your personal life. So yeah, already it's, I shy away from doing grocery shopping and getting recognized and it's out of fear of not doing a good enough meet and greet, basically, of I get caught off guard. I'm like, comparing these hamburger buns versus these hamburger buns, and it's like, are you Corey from Aquariumcoop? Yes. And then I'm so out of my element that I don't I feel like I don't give a proper handshake, thanks for the support experience. And so until I master that, I live in fear of running into people in real life. Like if I'm in a store or an event, no problem. I'm already there. I'm not comparing hamburger buns, but when I'm just randomly somewhere, at the farmer's market or something, you kind of got to snap back into oh yeah, I'm that guy. So my wife says that's an excuse for not going shopping. There is 20% of that. I'm not even going to lie. There is 20% of I just hate shopping too. How's Moo Boo Puffer? Ladybird's laying down right there. and Murphy's doing well as also. I am looking forward to, and maybe one of you guys know, um, I kind of want to get a really good camera outside for our pond because we get a lot. Like, yes, today I was looking at like a hawk or a bald eagle or something, and there's so much stuff that comes around there. But I want to get a good camera, possibly always face it the thing that we could live stream. And I know we're gonna do a, like kind of like the camera I'm on right now, focused on Murphy in the store when the new 1,400 gallon gets installed and everything. So, yeah, playing around. If you know a lot about outdoor cameras, like people set up for like watch this scenery thing that's reasonably well done. Because I read reviews and I watch videos and I'm like, it seems like it's good, but too often I'm like, this thing is crap. So, don't know what to do yet. Almost a year. Changed my aquarium game a million times over. Much love. Well, thanks, Ryan. I appreciate that. Thanks for sticking around. I should do a live stream with Chris for Thought. Or I mean Fish for Thought. I should do a live stream with Chris for Thought. That's his eating channel. That'd be way funnier if I only go on his eating channel and not his fish channel. Once the borders open back up, I would assume, being that Fish for Thought is an influencer for us, I would assume we'll actually get to do some interaction and maybe go to some events together and do some stuff. We already tried to do it once, but the board was basically saying, that ain't happening. So I've only, had some interactions through email and a bit about that, and not so much, the problem is I always feel like I don't know someone until I really, really hang out with them for like a good weekend and, try and drown them in the Peruvian water or something, I mean, that might be a thing. Maybe I'll see if he wants to go to Peru. That's everyone thinks Peru is awesome until you can actually go, and they're like, wait, it's like I have to sign this piece of paper that says if I die, it's on me. Like, oh yeah, this ain't no joke. Ask ADT about good cameras. Could be. Part of the problem is some of the cameras, they need to be able to live stream. So I need to be able to use them with basically YouTube independent software and be able to run. They need to be, have decent nighttime vision, decent daytime vision, decent audio to pick up nature sounds. The housings need to not get humidity. Like, there's all these little things that I've tried over the time. Like, this thing's not good enough. But I know there's people out there that are probably like, yeah, here's the one. Whenever you find someone that does it, like people like, oh yeah, I've got 8 cameras on my farm and I stream it to YouTube, maybe they'll know. Because everything on paper sounds good. Corey needs a puppy. I want to be fair here. 100% of the reason I don't get a puppy is because I don't take care of the dogs. My wife is the one that will feed them, change the water. I go on a ride along to take them to the groomers and everything, but I get to enjoy the fruits of her labor with the dogs, and I can totally get why she wouldn't want a puppy. So don't let this pressure her into it. I want her to actually fall in love with some random derp master, and then we'll have a third little puppy. Without a par meter, how do you know if the light intensity qualifies for high or low light? The reality is you won't. Without knowing, like, let's say you're used to using a bunch of high powered and low powered lights, it's gonna be really hard to like see. So if you have stuff you can compare to, yes. But if someone handed me a random light and then you like put it on an aquarium, I could kind of go like probably low light or probably high light. That being said, certain color spectrums will look very dim, but with a par meter are actually very high quality or very high output. So you can run into that problem. So unfortunately, there is no good, there is no good answer or way to tell. So we do use Nest cameras. We have probably 30 of them between the different businesses and everything, and that's actually what the Murphy cam is right now. And in my opinion, that's like 1/10 of the level I need. Someone suggested a 6400. Yeah, I've got an A7S III sitting here ready to go for the Murphy camera, but that's still not a great outdoor run 24 hours a day in 110-degree heat and 20-degree weather and rain and snow and, all of that stuff. So a certain type of camera, I think, for what I need to do outside versus what I'm doing inside, for sure. Long-term subscriber, first time catching you live. Well, Corey, I like the name. You even spelled it correctly. Good on you, Mr. Goodman. Uh-oh, the fishy mailman's up to trouble. If my wife's agreeing, if my wife agrees with anything, I know it can't be good for me. I gotta try. Oh, Katie, let's see. Hashtag Katie needs whatever dog speaks to her at the rescue. Yes, that's true. She's been looking at old Dog Haven, and the problem is, like, losing Sassy crushed me, and it always does. Like, losing any pet like that really crushes me, and I just know the odds of adopting like a 13-year-old lab. I've only got like a couple years before I get that misery again. Where in my head, if like, okay, well, if we get something younger, I told her like I'd love to get a puppy because I've never went and actually got a puppy, whether it's like a breeder or from a rescue or something. I've always adopted. Like Sassy was 11 when we got her, right? And the other dogs were like 3, and I think they were both about 3 when we got her. I said, I'm pretty much okay with any dog, even if it's a big dog, if it's like 5-ish or younger. I also, what I don't want is I don't want to get too old of a dog, because I feel like disproportionately you have to give attention to an older dog. And Wincy is at like 7 or 8. She might have just turned 8, maybe. And I don't want to steal her like prime years, if that makes any sense, like that 8 to 12 range where she's just old and cuddly and wants to hang out and just get a lot of attention, by going, well, this dog is older and needs to be cuddled more than you. And then it passes away 3 years later, and now she's 11 and she's missed 3 years of her extra old and cuddly time. And so if we get someone who's like 5, that's younger and like everything properly ages. That's my brain thinkings on it. Puppies are a ton of work. There's no doubt that puppies are a lot of work, but we, like Tinky, our one dog, she's kind of aggressive with other dogs, and I think with people too. She's very protective of Katie and myself, and I think adding a puppy to that, they've always responded well to kittens and that kind of stuff because there's no threat there to them. Whereas you bring in, like this 80-pound big dog, and they'll probably get along after a little bit, just like Tinky will with people. After a day or two, she's like, oh yeah, you're my friend. You're not trying to come over and, hurt my parents. And I think a puppy will negate a lot of that. But there is a lot of back end work on, you need to learn how to use the doggy door and the potty pads and how to eat and all of that. But I do know my wife, and she will enjoy that challenge. And she might say no, but she's the most caring person on the planet, and so she will thrive in that environment. How's the CO2 working on the Ladybird tank? It's working pretty good. Every once in a while I see some oxygen bubbles lift off the plants, but it's not going gangbusters. And I haven't really cranked it up much at all. I'm still going, I'd rather have it light instead of heavy. And so I'm waiting to see, probably, what's today? Today is Tuesday. Probably sometime this weekend I'll look and I'll go, all right, is plant growth increasing? Is it pushing in the right direction? If the answer is yes, I won't touch it. If it's like, no, I'd like it to go a little better. If that's the case, I will turn it up a little bit more. But I'd rather, I want the least amount needed to get growth going a little faster. Because it's really easy to go from not really growing to, oh my gosh, it's a jungle. I gotta get a lawnmower in there. It's because the air stone is degassing all CO2. Not true. I mean, it could be, but I'll say this. Get yourself an oxygen testing apparatus. Get yourself a CO2 testing apparatus. and you'll find how easy it is to actually get both being at maximum saturation. And the only reason I, kind of like was staunchly against that is if you saw the amount of oxygen going on in our warehouse tanks with, thousands of gallons of water and custom made CO2 tank for mixing and injection, you'll see that you can achieve both pretty easily. Increase CO2 and surface agitation for O2 and get rid of the air stone. You'll never convince me, Kyle. I've done a lot of testing, and I'm, this is one of those, like, I'm set in my ways, and I'll never not run an air stone. Well, I won't say never, but I'd be very hard pressed to not run an air stone. Air stones make the world go round. What are my thoughts on CChem Advance? I like CChem Advance a lot. Maybe that's a product we should bring back. Randy and I were talking on Monday of like, what products could we bring in that maybe we could go try and negotiate with them again or something like that. CChem Advance I do like because I do find when you're adapting either new cuttings from stem plants or new plants from like a store or something like that, it does help grow roots faster. And we used to use it, but on the scale we're at now, we would go broke buying that much Advance because we could only get it in like the normal bottle or like the 500 milliliter bottle. And we would need to be buying it by gallons, and I don't think they even make it in gallons. Maybe they do, but I swear last time I looked, we were slimming down sizes, and so we were having some difficulties. And a lot of the wholesalers we were buying from, we'd buy it all, and they wouldn't even like, they wouldn't even like carry it. Tom Barr and Karen Randall have written extensively about this. I disagree. Well, you know what the best thing about the internet is, Kyle? We can both disagree and still keep an aquarium. So that's awesome. Well, and I'll point out another thing too. If we're going to take those two people in particular, Karen Randall has said, as I've seen both of them present in person, by the way. Karen Randall says, you need as much light as you can possibly get always. She likes to have more than 100 par. Tom Barr says, you never need any more than 40 par ever. That'll grow every plant you'll ever try to grow. So both have written about CO2. They both seem to agree from what you're saying. Both have written about lighting and completely disagree, right? And so I'm just saying there's multiple ways to get to your endpoint. And from my testing, based on millions of dollars being sold in plants a year and monitoring it and building out facilities, I find they run much better if I'm injecting air and CO2 and keeping both at maximum saturation, as opposed to going with your method and eliminating air stones and air and increasing surface agitation and upping CO2. That being said, those are different scenarios than your home aquarium. I've tested my stuff the way I run my stuff. Maybe you're running your stuff differently. I also like Corvus Oskin. He runs all sumps on all of his tanks, has some of the, healthiest plants you'll see around, uses lots of aeration, but then also CO2 as well. But I think there's I'm not going to say you can't run it the way you don't want to run it, because you totally can. I myself find I get the best results out of running high oxygen from an air stone and CO2. That being said, maybe I'm just terrible at doing it, and that's why I get those results. Let's see. Wish you could click on a comment and comment on it. Yeah, that'd be a great feature. I wish they built that natively in so it would pop up on screen, but then also if you guys could directly answer comments, because it does get fragmented. Also, like Twitter, people do like 1, 2, 3, and 4, so that way you like see the thread. If it would do that also, if there was like, that's a suggestion I'm going to give to YouTube, is a suggestion so that you could have a multi-part. I've already told them we need more characters and limiting it to 200, but they said they have a lot of creators asking them to limit it below that. So it's like, oh, well, I guess, depending on chat rooms and stuff, or not chat, but different chat. Um, yeah. Do I plan on coming to Atlanta anytime soon at Aquarium Co-op? Um, Not that I'm aware of. Might be events there that lead us there. So, but at the moment, I don't know of any events near or at Atlanta. I do fly there pretty frequently just because Atlanta's a main hub. But in terms of an event there, nothing planned. That being said, every year there's more and more events being, I guess, made and built. Like there's, what's the one that I'm not going to, as far as I know so far in Tennessee? Um, Fish Room Fever and Chattanooga Ed, and there's a bunch of other people involved too. But I can't remember what the name of the event is. But that's a new show this year that's going on, which is probably pretty cool. The biggest problem for us, and what I tell these people is, the first thing we ask them is like, well, how many tickets have you sold, or how many people do you expect, right? Because for me to ship in like 2,000 shirts, Aquaticon is what it is, by the way. For me to ship in 2,000 shirts is about a $12,000 investment, right? Let's say there's only 500 people. So now I got to ship back out 1,500 shirts. So, okay, that's only $1,500 to ship out, but I've wasted $2,300. And so if we put that versus like, or you could go to this event where they have a track record, then I can at least go, okay, well, what should I plan to do, and that kind of stuff. Keystone Clash, I think we may have been invited to that, but part of it also is training and working with Zenzo and building out plans of like, what is the right mix of events? How, you might say like, well, you can do 6 events a year. Well, sometimes all those events land in 3 months, so we want to space them out, right? And how do we get to different parts of the country and different parts of the world and work in, like some of them happen where I know that one of the things we want to do for going to Peru is a different trip altogether, and it would be like in October. But that trip literally might be the same time as 2 other events that are going on in October. So it gets weird with that of like, what's an event versus filming versus this versus that. Scheduling gets difficult, or can get difficult. I'm moving to Washington State soon. Would you recommend what would your recommendation be to transport 30 plus fish between 2 tanks halfway across the U.S. during the summer? What would I do? So for sure I would use some kind of cooler, most likely bigger the better. I would also use some kind of air pump, whether you're going to use a power inverter in your truck or van or car or whatever, or like a USB with a battery bank, whatever that is, some kind of air apparatus, probably a cycled sponge filter in the biggest cooler you can dedicate space to, right? And that cooler would come in with you if you stay at hotels, and it would go back out in the back of the vehicle or whatever when you're ever doing. And as far as plants and all of that goes, I would probably just pack those like in a tote and keep the tote with a top on it and just let that be. If it's like if it's like a week, that'll be fine. And just try to be cognizant of it. Don't leave it in the back of an open truck. They're gonna freeze to death on the freeway. And then when you park overnight, the sun's gonna beat down on them in the morning and overheat them, right? So my best advice is treat the fish like you would a toddler, probably. Like, oh, well, don't leave them in the car, like bring them in, and, oh, they better sit in the passenger seat or the back seat or somewhere it's temperature controlled, all of those things, and just make sure they got air the whole ride. Probably wouldn't feed them for that week, and you probably might have like 1 or 2 losses or something, like, oh, dang. Or you might not, but, know that it's not going to be the easiest thing to do, but it's not impossible either. Triple Crown event this year will be good. More nerdy and less laser light shows. Probably, unless people show up with laser forks. I don't know. We're basically in this battle, I would say, between going to either Triple Crown event or Aquashella. trying to figure. We basically want to go to this Aquashella, talk with people, see what we like, what we don't like, and then make that decision. I think is where we're at because it's like next month we don't have to commit to anything. We're actually trying to, instead of doing a talk, I'm thinking we might try to do some kind of a game show where we give a bunch of stuff away. So if you're going to be in the audience, it'll definitely be worth your time to either ask me a question or participate from audience participation in this game show we're going to do, because we're giving you stuff. So, I don't want to ruin it. I don't want someone else to steal our idea. Or if we go, oh my gosh, that's not going to work at all, and we got to switch it up, we still have time to switch it up. But yeah, it'll be a good time. Something I think it would be very fun to try to do like a different kind of game showy type thing at each event. It doesn't always have to be different, but like you don't necessarily know what game we're gonna do. All right. I was just thinking we should rebuild Hollywood. Is it Hollywood Squares where it's like they put different celebrities and then you play tic-tac-toe, and then we'll just do it with like fish nerds. What are my optimal parameters to breed Episcogramma cockatoides? 7.2 pH with 84-degree water. I like to do it in a 10-gallon with a couple of caves. That's the way I like to do. Closed caption said taco shell instead of aquashella. Ooh. I gotta make sure Zenzo knows this. We somehow gotta turn aquashella into taco shella. Like, maybe if we have a good show and we bring a lot of you guys, we can demand a taco truck show up for the Texas show. I bet you that's a demand we could make happen. Taco shella. Don't forget about the Catfish Convention in Washington, D.C. Got to go to that even if you just hang out. Yes, every year there's either a CatCon or Cataclysm. They rotate every year. And I definitely need to get out more. Part of what I'm dealing with right now is I basically quarantine myself. I'm turning down things to go do with Katie, and like we're gonna go see the opera at some point this year. But to schedule that, I'm making sure it's not near another event. And so why would I do that? Can you imagine I go to like the opera and then I get sick? Whether it's COVID or not, doesn't really matter. The minute I'm sick, it doesn't really make sense for me to go, I'm going to go shake 7,000 people's hands this weekend. So we're scheduling all that kind of stuff going, well, okay, I'll be back, but I don't want to do it right when I'm back either. I don't want to go aquashella if I was to get sick and then be like, I got the whole opera sick. So then it's like, okay, well, we need like 2 weeks after that. So part of this like spacing out 6 to 8 weeks is so I can still have a life with my wife and family, and not that I'm, partying it up, but, every once in a while my wife would like to do something that's not fish related, if you could believe that. Did I hear they're making a new King of the Hill? Yes. My wife told me that it's also going to be set in maybe not in the future, but not in the same timeline. Like they're going to be older. I would have to imagine we will watch it, considering we own every King of the Hill season on DVD. We are that level of nerd. Was the coop still planning on heading to Australia in the near or distant future? It's still on the agenda. I believe it would be a dual event of Australia and New Zealand. However, like New Zealand locks itself down like every 7 minutes. So we've got to get through this whole COVID thing and all of that. And then it becomes a lot easier to actually buy tickets and plan to do something instead of like, well, just kidding, not doing that event this year. We try, I feel really bad and I try really hard. And so far I've never had to cancel out of anything or reschedule something because I don't want people taking vacation, buying plane tickets, all of this, and then, we're not showing up, right? So I try very hard. And once I'm committed, I got to be committed. The only thing that stops me is me getting sick, something like that. And so I self-isolate to make sure I don't ruin your guys' time based on a decision I make, if I can help it. There's always going to be like, no matter what, something could happen and I might not make it. That's its own thing. But you know, I will try my hardest. Can someone recommend where I can buy a lid or top purchase for a tank that isn't made anymore? I bought a large tank on Facebook Marketplace as an upgrade, but the brace and the lid was broken at delivery. It's 150 gallon. If you need the brace too, that makes it a lot harder. There are some companies that will build you them or still sell them. They're not that economical to ship. They might be, you know, so everyone, there's always someone that's like, nope, I've got a place. It's called, you know, beercozies.com that happens to sell tank braces and the shipping's only $1.95. But it can be very hard to find sometimes. As far as tops being like made, like if you're just making covers, having or making some out of the green, not green, yeah, green. I was trying to say greenhouse panel, sunlight panels. That's one way you can like get around it. But if that center brace is missing, you might want to look at building a brace out of glass and silicone or tracking down another brace or rim with a brace so that you can sleep at night. Do I ever play Magic the Gathering anymore? No. If my business partner moves back close to me, we're flirting with the idea of opening a game store because we still love Magic the Gathering and we love being nerds and playing games, but at this point, I never find time to get away and actually go do any gaming. Plus COVID and all that, and you know, same thing. Oh, Corey went and played Magic with some local nerds, got sick, not coming to Aquashella. Hope you guys aren't mad. But no, I still would love to. I love to do anything competitive like that, so it's not hard to talk me into it. Any tips for owning pea puffers? My betta just died, and I'm thinking of to add a pea puffer. Lots of frozen bloodworms. They love to eat that. Frozen brine shrimp. In a 5-gallon spec like that, I would just keep just the one. Just have one little party animal. And yeah. Magic Arena online. The problem is I still have to dedicate time, and I work. Even when I play games, I'm working at the same time. I'm crafting emails. I'm looking at numbers, and so being that arena is timed, it doesn't work. I've tried it. It doesn't work out that well for me. So like and I only like playing at a very high level. Like I'm used to always placing in tournaments and PTQs and all of that and not just like I'm just playing for fun. The fun for me is being very competitive, and so you know that means getting back into playtesting and metagaming, the you know and learning other formats in the PTQ. Like that's the only time I ever did a Rochester draft was in PTQ top 8. You know, so learning different formats, knowing, you know, and playing on teams and all that kind of stuff. It's a whole rabbit hole. It's but you know, very enjoyable. Do you think a 3D printer could be used in the hobby? Yes. Or how do I think it? I think they're you know, a lot of people are making little parts, and I've got a do I well no, it's in my fish room actually using it. There's a 3D printed like Neverclog Airstone. Um, there's tons of stuff. I wish I was really good at it because I would love to make prototype parts and then be able to take it to a manufacturer and be like, do this thing but better than I do it. I used to play a decent amount of Hearthstone, but then I kind of got away from it, and you know the power creep's gotten a little crazy. So the problem was it never was very good on phone. I don't ever use like I don't ever use a tablet, and then on computer I don't know, I never seem to make time for it. So I think it's best in a travel format, but I'm always at a computer. So yep. I do still play EverQuest though. Usually daily. You know, even like today, I just all I've done today is put some stuff on the bazaar so it could sell. But usually I'm within earshot of that. Like to acknowledge that you're an honest, credible, heart and sleeve kind of guy. Keep doing the thing. Well, thanks, Jeff. I've actually been reflecting on that, and so I do a lot of thinking of as popularity increases, and whether you want to call it popularity or fame or whatever, um, I try to look for, I guess, mentors or people I respect or I want to learn about. And so lately with deaths, I've been looking at into, their careers and stuff, and people that I think, you know, I've always been a fan of Louis Anderson, right? And we tried to, I know I've talked about this in other live streams before. We've tried to see him live like 3 or 4 times. Um, but he recently passed away, and I never got to see him in Vegas. Even though every time I went, I would try to buy tickets. He was always either not there or sick or something, right? And but what I find interesting about him is he was in comedy. That shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. But he did clean comedy. He didn't have to swear a bunch and all that, and he was self-deprecating. Talked about his weight, and he talked about things that people can identify with all the time. And I want to say, I looked up his net worth. He ended with like $50 million or something. It led, from what outsider looking in briefly, a pretty good life. And so I try to go, well, how do I apply that to the aquarium co-op, the YouTube starness of it, and all of that. And I like to think I'm doing a fairly good job at that. Not that your ego doesn't get your head sometimes or whatever, but it's I know how to grow faster on YouTube, and I know I could exploit TikTok, and I could do some of these things, but none of those circle back around to, but how does that actually make the hobby better? Like 10 more million views doesn't necessarily make the hobby better if I'm showing something that's not educational, or at least trying to be educational, right? And so yeah, I try to study some people like that, and study might not be the right word. Investigate, learn, see like, oh, that's a path that could be taken that looks like uh, a path similar to how I want to take. I don't really want the fame that comes with it, but I do want the free ability to do anything I want to do, travel the world, go get dirty in the Amazon or in Thailand or wherever. So trying to balance all the things. Let's see what time. Okay, we still got time. Perfect. Lots of 3D printed items on Etsy, betta hides, custom aquarium mods. Yeah, I know there's people 3D printing like stands for lights and things. I need some tank mates for Celestial Pearl Danios in a 40-liter tank, so about a 10-gallon. I would get, oh my, yeah, light on my phone was on. I would get some either like some kind of dwarf Cory. I would do Hastatus because that's my favorite, but yeah, I mean, Pygmaeus or Abrosis would be fine as well. Rest in peace, Louis. One funny dude, longtime fan from the 80s. His mom wanted to stop at a yard sale. He wanted to know if it was Raymond Burr's house. He was a big, sweet guy. We'll always remember. Yeah, that, and in the show Baskets, like, he's kind of an amazing actor too. Like that, yeah, a lot of skill there that I think kind of, well, maybe didn't fly on the radar because he did win some stuff, but I think a lot of people don't know at the level of brilliance that kind of exists in that guy's mind, and how quick-witted he was and sharp. That's, I get, maybe I see it a little more from just like knowing being in front of a crowd, and how, like, the more people and the more things you're trying to read and process at the same time, like the more it like starts wrenching down on your brain. You guys see it all the time where sometimes I just have to pause and like let my brain computer catch up, like, hold on. What I'm trying to say is, you know, building my first basement fish room. I plan to foam board insulate the cinder block. Ceiling is exposed rafter. Is that okay? Worried about mold. So here's what I know. I know enough to know that many projects that I've done don't work out anywhere near what I think's going to happen. So like by foam insulating the cinder block, you might make things worse. Uh, Sometimes it's better to let stuff breathe. Sometimes it's better to insulate. Sometimes stuff's getting too hot. I don't know that anyone knows the right, perfect secret sauce to a fish room because each little scenario is going to be different. Are you running open tops? Aren't you running open tops? How many tanks? How much water are you going to spill on the floor? How cold does the outside walls get? How hot are you going to be above the fish room? All these things factor in. And so I think you kind of have to start from doing one thing. Where does that get me to? What's the next thing I got to install? What's the next thing I got to do? And so like when we built this place, a lot of it was, let's put a lot of contingencies in and then see what I do and don't have to run. And even still, like we've got a little bit of where we built a concrete footer. There's a little bit of cool air and snow from the outside, and the warm air was touching it from here. And we built these benches that no air circulation can get behind. Remove those, put some fans on them, and dry it out. But now if I want to put the bench back there, which I do because it looks nice and it hides plumbing, I need to get these little fans. And I do have the little fans. They're actually right off screen over there. I just need to install them, but that wasn't foreseen and couldn't really have known and shouldn't have happened or whatever. But he's kind of got to go, okay, well, that's the next little evolution we got to do. And that's the next little evolution we got to do. Hit the like button for Corey, please. Yeah, I don't think I've asked people to hit the like button in probably 3 months. Do you have to install a drain in the floor in the fish room? I don't have a floor drain. Well, I got one in the bathroom, but that's the only one I have, and it's not used by the fish room at all. But no, basically none. Like the warehouse doesn't have a floor drain. Store doesn't have a floor drain. The break room does, which is useful, but this fish room doesn't. Basically, I've never had a good floor drain. I end up coming out of the wall as low as I can, and then either pumping water there or just, if here's the floor and here's the drain, I just know I gotta, okay, plan all the heights of everything so that it slopes to there. That's what I have to do. Fish rooms need air circulation or else molds happens. If cold air meets moist air, condensation will happen. True. I definitely have fans installed. We have lots of circulation. That is usually a key component. Everyone make a second account, hit that like button again. Can I talk about the benefits of lava rock in an aquarium? Yeah, lava rock is actually kind of magical in that if you get big enough pieces, and I'm not as big of a fan of the ones that like, oh, it's got a hole drilled into it. The magic really happens in a big dense piece of lava rock. If it's solid, as in not any swim through holes, the core of that doesn't get a whole lot of exposure to the water or moving oxygen. And so that core, so maybe you have like this much of that, then you've got the rest of this, and all this part out here gets water flow and oxygen to it. And so it grows bacteria that'll convert into nitrates, basically. It'll take fish pee and go, hey, now you're nitrates. This core, the center, won't get that oxygen. So you'll have denitrifying bacteria. This will actually consume nitrates and things from your aquarium. And that's a different type of bacteria. And that can be very useful. That's mostly what salt water runs on. All that live rock, and they want the centers of it to eat up the nitrates. Can be very useful in the home aquarium. Freshwater kind of is doing what live plants do also. Live plants, look cool. But that lava rock sometimes in like a big African cichlid tank, all that dense lava rock is pretty good. That being said, most people use the one with holes so their cichlids can swim through it, but I like it quite a bit. And it doesn't always have to be giant chunks, right? It could be little ones, and it's all about flow. And one of the problems that you do have if you use it in a filter, like some people will buy stuff meant for like barbecues and use it in a filter, right? One, rinse it really, 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 really well because it'll bomb your aquarium. But two, over time, fish poop clog the pores, and then it's not really doing much at all for you. So you got to keep it clean. It's one of the pains to clean is really why it's probably not more widely used as a filter media. It is used quite a bit in ponds and stuff, but just know that it's I guess a high maintenance media. Anoxic plenums, I don't do much with it because I find that plants serve that purpose for me. I know there's like Dr. Novak and other people that will, take you down a 200 day rabbit hole with that stuff. That being said, from what I have played with, can you accomplish it? Yes. Is it worth it to me? No. And you can put a lot of, eggs in that basket, and if a fish digs, then you can run into some problems. And then I know the first counter argument is that, like, well, you can put it in the sump. Like, yes, there's always ways around all of these things. I find that plants just are that easy go-to for me that solve most of what anoxic filtration solves, or would solve for me also. So I default to pretty plants, easy to grow. I enjoy growing plants versus something like an anoxic plenum or deep sand bed, or any of those mechanisms to get towards that result. Also can be fascinating, but in that scientific, I do that because I'm enjoying looking at it, not because, oh, this is so much more practical than just growing this plant. That's awesome. Kathy, I think you might want to rewind a little bit. I did answer your question on some tank mates for your Celestial Pearl Danio tank. So maybe you stepped away for a minute and missed it. Are dwarf chain loaches wild caught? Mine are having a hard time taking to dry food. I don't know that answer. I'd have to ask Robert. I haven't looked at a fish list in a long time. A lot of our vendors will designate whether they're wild caught or not. I think they're mostly captive bred because I don't remember seeing them wild. But I mean, I'm sure we can get both, I would guess. But yeah, to be what yours are, I don't know. My suggestion is always, if you're having a problem, ask, if you bought them from a local store, go back to that local store and ask them to feed them in the store. Be like, hey, remember I bought some of these? Yeah, what are your guys eating? And if they feed them and they eat, get that food, right? And if they don't eat, be like, whoa, they're not eating. Mine aren't eating. And so at least you've established, hey, mine aren't eating, yours aren't eating. If I can't get mine to eat, maybe I can get my credit, or some more or whatever, right? But most times you'll go back in and be like, oh, you're feeding them blah, blah, blah. I'm going to get some of those. And then you can transition from that to something else. I think you were saying yours were just dry food, though. So maybe they're eating frozen bloodworms. You might be able to, like one of the moves I would do, I don't know what you're feeding, but let's say you're feeding them bloodworms. Maybe you mix bloodworms with Hikari Vibrobites, so they're soaking up that bloodworm juice. And over time, less and less bloodworms, more and more like Vibrobites going in. Hopefully make the switch for you. Is a 5-gallon okay for a pea puffer? Yeah, I would say so. How are my new braces? They're good. Still just have the tops. And they're currently making the holes bigger. So we're kind of going in the wrong, well, I don't know about the wrong. I actually don't care. But we're going in a direction where they're making these gaps bigger. So it's kind of more of a pain in the butt because you eat like a sandwich and you've got like bread stuck there. But that's so that they can pull the two teeth that are behind forward. So overall, I would say this is going way easier than I would have thought. And moving, time's flying. Like that's a good thing, is I stay so busy that like this 2-year span, they'll be coming off in no time. And I was sitting there going, it's been 2 years? Are you kidding me? Why do people hate undergravel filters? I've used them for years. I think mostly because new things are perceived to be better. So it's kind of like people have a natural fear of older cars. Like, why are you still driving that 95 Camry? Oh, because they were built to run like 400,000 miles with normal maintenance. And they go, well, it could break down any moment. Like, well, sure, it could. But a new car has just as much of a chance. I mean, not really just as much of a chance, but it has a chance also. And so I think new bells and whistles and gadgets are what sell it. You know, you got a fork with a laser beam on it, and that's better than a normal fork. But part of it is also it's gotten harder to get undergraduate filters because shipping's expensive. Let's see. What exactly is in my fry food? I have no idea. I would have to read the ingredients. I'm sure there's fish meal. I'm sure there's wheat meal. I'm sure there's 30 other things. And that's me being candid. Because from the time of working on fry food, like 7 years ago, to today, there's no way I still have it memorized. Like that has been flushed out. So short of me grabbing the bottle and going, it's got this, and this in it. Especially since there's like, you can actually see it right there. There's 2 prototype foods right there. So I spend time, we're working on other foods with Extreme and you know, trying out stuff and going, well, what if we upward this? Can you get more of this? Can you do this? Yeah. So I would say read the thing, which I realize that's going to sound like Corey doesn't care about his fry food and all that. But if I also misspeak here, I'm going to be chastised. So it's easier and better for me to go, your fish will love it. A lot of people, we sell a lot of it. It does really well. I love using it. When we formulated it, relatively good food while keeping costs down. Feeding consistency is the most important so that it sprays out and has the right granule size and all of that. To be honest, I actually had a food I liked better than the fry food we sell now, but hobbyists would never have it because it had pig blood meal in it. Fish love it. Fish grew insane, but like our retail customers were losing our minds. And so that's one of those like, well, we'll go with the lesser one that doesn't have pig blood meal in it, and we'll sell a ton anyway, knowing that it's cheaper and the fish actually grew a little bit better with that pig blood meal in it in my testing, right? And again, my testing, maybe it's different than your testing. Maybe you know, my fish eat tacos every Wednesday night. It's the leftovers for my Taco Tuesday, and so maybe that plus the pig blood meal works out better than my fry food. What's the water pressure on your auto water system? We used a valve to tone it down. I'd have to actually go and look, but I think we dialed it down to about 40 psi. It was pretty high though. It was like, because we have a pressurized unit from the well, and so it was really high, so we had to dial it down. How are the mangroves doing? They're doing pretty good. Some have really good leaf growth. Some I think have just actually died. As I was walking around today, I was thinking, at some point I need to do a tally and go, okay, we bought how many thrived, like, oh, 42 out of 50 thrived, or whatever that looks like, and then give like a little update. Extreme Foods in the UK, I'm unable to find them. As far as I know, they are at the wholesalers, but convincing these stores to bring it on has been a little bit difficult. I know there's like a few that have, but I'm not sure. I don't have like an up-to-date report on how many stores or which stores have it. And maybe, you know, maybe Andy's listening right now and he will give me that report, and then I'll tell you next week, like, hey, it's in XYZ store in the UK. But I know if it's not there in your local store, it shouldn't be that hard to actually get a hold of fairly soon, like any minute it should be there. Because I know they had to go through a lot of permitting and all of that. So. Hi Corey, I've got some of the mosaic plant seeds. Any tips on water parameters for germination? I don't, Ronnie. In fact, that's a plant that I have only ever grown like once. We tried to bring some back from Florida and it didn't do so well for Dean, so we didn't get it going. But I've never done it from seeds, so I got zero experience from seed to that. So I got no practical help. Have you all considered selling mother plants or extra large plants? I personally would buy all of it. No, because we already know that it's a customer service nightmare. Most people don't realize when you buy an Amazon store that's this big, you pay $25 for it, it's going to melt back. That was grown out of water. So you sell someone an extra expensive big plant, it costs a lot of money to ship it to you, and then it dies back, and then you just get a one-star review of like Aquarium Co-op sells dying plants. Um, the only ones that kind of worked out okay were Anubias and Java ferns, and we used to do those in the store, but we could far outsell more than they could ever produce. And so I actually cringe when I see these big extra large swords being sold to shows and things. And I'm sizing up the customer, which is not a fair thing to do, but I'm listening in and I go, this person sounds like they are very new to the hobby. I don't think they know they're buying something that's going to die back, because that's not what happens in the real world. In the real world, you go to Home Depot and you buy a plant. You're like, look, I got a giant plant and it grows to be bigger. In the aquarium world, you buy a giant plant and it dies back and then comes back. So we actually have very strict requirements on plant size we will buy, and we will not take plants bigger than that because it only sets up the expectation of, I bought this great plant and now it has died. And so, again, that average customer, probably half the people that buy plants from us have never kept a plant before, will never fertilize it, will never do anything, and just be like, plant died, what do? And that's very hard, considering most people don't realize, like, oh, there's videos to watch on every plant, essentially. There's articles to read, there's this, there's that. But they're just not, there's just that type of demographic. Like, I buy things and then I see what it does. And the bigger you make that plant, the harder it falls on them, basically. Game Czar is back. Welcome back. Should I drill my tanks to do auto water changes in my fish room, or is there a better option to accomplish the automation? I don't think there's a better option. Just know that with automating water changes, it does change your hobby. You spend less time with the fish. You may notice a little less. You may have your hands in that tank a little less. I'm not saying it's worse. Just know that it changes it. I go back and forth on what I think is actually better for me. What happened to the foot-long dojo that used to be in the 800 gallon with the clowns? Went back to the store and got sold to someone else. Yeah. I think, when we were moving, that whole moving to get to this house process was like liquidate tons so that the move was less brutal. When I retire from my business, 18 plus years, I plan to move back to Washington. I would love to work at Aquarium Co-op. We do hire people, like it's kind of a camped job. We are, but we're giving a lot of our what I call a frontline worker, like people in the retail store and the warehouse and such. A lot of them will be getting a raise soon, which will be nice. The reality is the cost of living has gone up by quite a bit, so we're looking hard at where we can scrape up some money and give it to people to make rent and gas and a few other things a little bit easier. An issue I see with selling extra large plants is if your parameters are a bit different than where they grow them, they will melt. And people complain. Yep. And pretty much everyone has different water parameters when they're all growing out of water and then they go into water. So that's one of the biggest problems. Julian says, oops, missed the live stream notification. And it was at this exact point that I remember I'm still terrible at my job and I never sent out the text message. I don't know. Clearly I got too much to do. I don't know how I stamped that into my brain of when you schedule a live stream, schedule the notification. Yeah, bad at this. In my experience, can cherry shrimp and guppies be kept together? Oh, yes, Craig. I've got lots of videos on those setups. Some of my favorites are 40 breeders with shrimp and guppies. Oof, lots of plants. It's to die for. One of my favorite setups for sure. How common is it to have guppies die from pH? I actually don't think it's that common for pH, more of hardness. Usually if you have a low pH, you usually have a low hardness, and that leads to kind of sickly guppies over time. I think that's fairly common. I like to see them at least 7.0 pH and hardness of at least like 100 parts per million. Wait, my partner just got accepted to the doctoral program at UW, so Seattle may be in the future. I'm transitioning into self-employment and aquarium hobby side hustling. Well, good luck. That side hustling is a grind. It's all fun and games when you're like, sweet, I made 80 bucks on plants this week, until like rent's due and you're like, I need $800 in plants this week. It's that mind shift of just like, whoo, this is not so fun. That being said, like clearly it can work out and I've done it. I just see a lot of people like, oh, didn't you know I'm gonna be the world's next biggest doodad maker, and then they do it and then they're like, whoo, turns out it's a full-time job. Who knew? But then you have people like Dean that, you know, become a doodad maker and then continues to make doodads for like 50 years. So, you know, all I'm saying is fish and plants are not a get-rich-quick scheme. Nobody's getting rich quick with those. It's a long, long road. Long road. How can I maintain 7 approximate pH after water changes? Well, if your pH is higher, don't worry about it. If it's lower, do smaller water changes, and the pH should fluctuate less with some crushed coral. Have I thought about doing a gaming live stream? I have. However, different demographic than what's here. Highly likely to probably swear on camera. And it's just a different personality altogether. In real life, I do swear. I'm not like crazy malicious or anything, but you know, I definitely watch what I say so that everything could be watched with kids in the room, or you're at work or whatever, right? In this mindset, where a gamer mindset is a different different level of that's acceptable, right? So it's more of like hanging out with your friends as opposed to hanging out with your grandma. And this is the, oh, I'm hanging out with my grandma. I got to be, you know, make sure I'm cordial, make sure I watch what I say, and all of that, which it probably makes it seem like I'm swearing like a sailor when I'm not on stream. That's not the truth either. But, you know, I'm not going to say like, oh, I've never sworn a day in my life. Let's see here. I had something I wanted to say because I read a comment and now I've lost the train. I don't know where I'm at. I guess it'll just have to go. It was probably the best idea I had all day and I've lost it. How often would you change your canister pre-filter? I have an Awaze Thermo 600. I rinse them bi-weekly, but at what point should you change them out? I've never used one long term because I hate them. But in theory, that intake pre-filter should last you like 5 years or more. Now, if you're too aggressive when you're cleaning them, maybe you'll get a little bit less. However, should last a very, very, very long time for you. If you're not getting that, well, then maybe they got bad sponge, but it's pretty hard to screw up sponge, honestly. I'll leave it at that because otherwise I'll spend the next 20 minutes tearing a Awaze apart. Corey's called me a grandma. That's right. We're all grandmas. It's true. We used to channel the power of the grandma army. I'll bring it back. Don't you tempt me. If I had to have a fish that was a store mascot that wasn't a moo puffer, what would it be? I probably would do something with guppies because it would be it'd be easy to add more to it and change the colors and use them on different colored shirts and all of that. I feel like with Murphy, there's only like, or a moo puffer, there's only so many ways to draw a moo puffer and do things. But with a guppy, there's like unlimited variations. So I feel like I could continually evolve that. Does plant growth in new installed tank necessarily mean that the healthy capable of holding new fish? Kind of. That goes into like that season tank. For the most part, if you're growing some algae and you're growing plants, I would say you could start adding some fish. Always got to keep an eye on it. But I just remembered what the thing I wanted to talk about a little while ago was. And this shows you how my brain works, by the way, because I'm reading and trying to cue things up. And so if you've been reading chat, you're like, wow, that was a little while ago. Someone was asking, now that Robert is manager of the warehouse, does that mean you'll never see him on an unboxing anymore? No. No, it doesn't mean you won't see him. In fact, we filmed an unboxing with him last week. So in the next couple of weeks, you'll see him again. Usually once someone kind of becomes like, oh yeah, you're decently good on camera. Like, yeah, let's mix it up. Let's get Robert in. Let's get Jimmy in there. Let's get Candy in there. Let's get Irene in there. Let's get Zenzo. Let's get Randy. Let's get Dean. Let's get, Thatch. Let's get Brandon. Like, there's a lot of people. Nick. And there's some people that don't want to be on camera at all, and there's some people that like it. And we try to just go, that'd be fun. Let's do that. And that's mostly what we've been doing lately. So, but no, I think you're probably not going to get as many unboxings with him, but my brain's already been turning like, what could we do in the warehouse that might be fun? Like, it's been a long, long time since you guys seen us do like an unboxing of plants, which is kind of boring, but I think the sheer scale of it and the operation, when you see like, whoa, that is a lot of people unpacking plants, and this is like a no joke operation that goes down 2 to 3 times a week. Like, whoa. Like, even just seeing that, and then we would probably talk about our custom built CO2 reactors and the lighting schedule we're using and how much CO2 do we go through, because you wouldn't know, but like the warehouse, you're like, what is all that? Oh, that's the 15 CO2 cylinders we're swapping in and out between deliveries of CO2 and this and that. And what are those? Oh, those are giant cooling fans. So when it's 100 degrees outside, we can keep the same temperature level by evaporative cooling going on the warehouse tanks. And, so there'd be a lot of stuff to kind of look at. All right. Have I read Rosario Lacorte's book, An Aquarist's Journey? I haven't. I think Randy has, and it's on my to-do list that I may or may never get to. And I say that because there's so many things I want to do, and then there's like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Dang it, why didn't I do that? A packing Olympics in the warehouse remembers to be funny. It's true. We'll do it like they did in The Office, where it's paper clips and then yogurt lids. Those will be the medals. Candy overhauls with the thank you, Corey, for 3 years and counting of employment. Thank you, Corey and Katie, for all you do or have done for myself and Caleb. Well deserved, and lucky to find you, lucky to have you. And I look forward to expanding the customer service department. One of the best things we can do is diversify Candy, so Candy can go on vacation and take time off and work on other projects and all that. So she's been working hard on not only answering you guys' questions and where'd that package go and why is this thing broken with the website, but also in putting together documents to hopefully bring someone on to work underneath her and help answer some more of these questions. And we've got new people answering to people from retail and all of that. And, but the more we can free up Candy, the more we can try and accomplish more things on that customer service front. And, the job has changed over the years. She's got weekly, meetings about customer service. And, just from the first, when we first implemented it, it was like, people have questions and we need to answer them, to all the way now we're generating reports. How often is something breaking in the mail? How often is a customer breaking it? How often is it arriving just broken? How often do we misship something? How often does the package being stolen, like being claimed delivered, but no, they never got it, versus all of these things? And so tagging and doing all of these things on the back end lets us pull up these very intricate reports and look at stats and know how are we doing as a company and what do we think. Every time you guys leave a bad review, right? Which isn't very often, but we probably get one or two a day is my guess because I think we're over like, well, let me see if I can see that number because I've been wondering this number. I want to know how many reviews we have on our website. I know it's got to be a lot. I want to look that up while I'm talking, but so many things have changed over the years, and I think for the better. We're getting more efficient at it. When we identify, some of Candy's job is identifying what people have a lot of questions about. Then we hand that over to Irene and myself, and maybe I talk about it in a live stream or I make a video on it. Irene will be doing articles about it, putting it in newsletters, filling out the FAQ. There's a lot of that stuff kind of goes behind the scenes there that is building out just massive databases and all of these things to hopefully just answer questions better and easier. Let's see our reviews. I want to see how many we have in total across all our products. Where would I see that? Click the reviews button. Maybe that'll do it. How do I know this? We have 47,956 reviews. And I know that every time we get a bad one, Candy will email you and try to make it right, figure out where it went wrong. Did it go wrong with the product was broken? Did it go wrong with, I thought this plant was going to be 10 feet tall, or it came, and it looked like Ace Ventura delivered it, or whatever the qual may be. And then, we try to fix it. So, like here, we've got one right here that is right at 3 stars. So I don't know if we email at 3 stars anymore. We used to. Now we email. I know we email at 2 and 1 star. I don't know if we email at 3 star just because of the sheer amount. But they say, I'm using our Aquariumcoop air pump. So I'm using this air pump, the Aquariumcoop sponge filter. And I love that they both fit together so well and keep my fry safe while providing a strong flow. I'll admit the flow is stronger than I expected, even in a 40 breeder. But that's not a problem, although a future version that allows for controlling the flow would be amazing. So this is where if we were talking to that person, we would tell that person, and maybe they're listening, I don't know, put one of our mini intake sponges on the outflow, and that will diffuse some of it. Anyway, they go on. Unfortunately, the reason I took off 2 stars is that periodically the pump will start making a loud buzzing sound that doesn't go away for hours at a time. When it's not buzzing, it's quite silent, but I haven't figured out how to stop it from buzzing. There's nothing it's leaning against, and it's attached with the suction cup plate and filter as intended. It's possible I just got a defective unit. If you already have a very loud fish room, you may not even notice, but in a small fish room, it is otherwise quiet. It really sticks out and ruins the vibe. Well, if you happen to be listening, Julia, or Julian, email us. We'll try to troubleshoot. That's what we do all day long, is try and troubleshoot stuff like that and figure out, is it, possibly sucking in air somehow? Is it possibly touching something? Yeah. Yes, we only do 2 and 1 star. So this is just, and they may have already reached out to us, but this is, this is what we do all day long, pretty much. All right. A new member. Welcome, Joseph. Wait, where's that question? Right there. Ooh, Cody Green finally did 200 cardinals in a 75 gallon. I guarantee you that looks awesome. Dale Howard, asking 50 times and ignoring everyone doesn't help you at all. Dale Howard in here trying to get a question answered and people are answering and he's ignoring? Or is he trying to get my attention and am I ignoring? That happens a lot. Oh, I see. Well, no, he retracted his message. Ryo Wintabi says, how are my Yale labs doing? I've recently been wanting to keep some African cichlids again. They're doing okay, but I completely neglect them. Like, they get fed. I don't pull the babies. I haven't built them an elaborate habitat. I actually need to get rid of them, but I just haven't. It's one of that, like, yeah, they're doing fine. Yeah, yeah. But really, I should be like, all right, let me find them a home. But I don't have, like, I still have open totes, so I'm not like, ooh, I need to get these out of here so that I can get the fish I want in. Still working on filling with more fish I like. Brittany says, I'm a real person trying to ask a real question. All right. I'm a real person trying to see what you're trying to ask. Let me see if I can find it for you real quick. I feel like I'm missing something. I paid twice and tried your links, but I don't think you can see my questions. No, I can. The most common thing that happens is people don't realize, like, I think at the end, it tells me how many chat messages where it's like, there was 17,000 messages or whatever that crazy number is. And it's like, I can't read that fast. So there's stuff that's going to get missed. But if you're hearing this, rest assured, your stuff comes through just fine. It's just, I might be only be able to read 1 out of 10 messages out loud. Well, out loud, maybe 1 out of 100. I don't know. I can only scan so fast and look for what I think might be a good question or something I haven't talked about in a long time. And there are lulls, right? Sometimes it's gonna be like, okay, I'm hunting for a question, doing the what am I going to talk about next? I bought 3 sponge filters and I'm loving it a lot. I have 2 large filters in the 60-gallon. My 4 white skirt tetras, love it. That's awesome. If you got 4 white skirt tetras in a 60-gallon, they're living like kings. I put an air stone for both, which makes it super nice. Happy customer. I'm a happy seller then. At what point does overstocking become an issue if water parameters are ideal? I've got a 29-gallon tank that's overrun by platies, and my ammonia and nitrate levels all stay at 0 without a water change. I don't think to me, it doesn't sound like you really have much of a problem. In wild, you can find stuff be crazy dense and also stuff be crazy sparse. I think if it looks like your fish are living as well as they did when you had less, water parameters looking good, and you yourself are enjoying it, I think those are like the 3 check marks. If one of those starts going, like they don't look as happy, or you're not enjoying it, or water parameters are becoming a pain, if one of those 3 check boxes aren't checking anymore, then maybe it's time to do something. When do you think we'll get a full functional preview of the lights you're working on? Probably like the month they're coming out or something. And the reason being is our initial order is now looking more like $200,000 to $250,000, and the financial stake we have in that, if I was to show all what it did and a competitor was to launch that light at like the same time and potentially take away sales, that could be very detrimental to us. And so there's not a lot of upside to showing early, and there's quite a bit of downside. That being said, I do leak stuff from time to time, but this one, that it could really, really hurt us. So yeah, and we're still decently far away. We're in a meeting on Monday. We were talking about these are all the products we want to launch this year. We need to total how much money is that? How long will it take us to generate the money to launch each one of those products? Like right now on the timeline, I think heaters are going to land at the summer. And as Randy makes a joke, like, perfect time to launch a heater in the middle of summer. And it's like, well, we'll be ready for winter though, and that's, we could have tried to rush it out in November of last year, and that would have been a rushed thing. Instead, it's going to launch the worst time, but be better for it. So, we generally don't rush things. We don't get everything right, but we don't rush it. If we make a mistake, it's because something happened in manufacturing, we missed it, we couldn't foresee that, whatever it's going to be, and not because we didn't spend enough time. We spend a lot of time on this stuff, and it's like, ooh, didn't think about that, or ooh, didn't know that was going to be a thing. Sometimes you just can't see it. You couldn't know that 1 out of 50 people are going to put a USB air pump underwater. Just never crossed my mind ever. So then you learn, you go, okay, well, maybe we'll be able to adapt that on the next air pump we make. How do we make it better things that say don't put underwater? I see Brittany said 7.5. She might have been asking a question. Oh wait, my pH was 9 before my water change. Natural ways to lower my pH, in my opinion, on vinegar. I've never used vinegar to lower pH. So my pH was at 9 before my water change. And so the natural way for me is over time, water becomes more acidic. As you feed fish, acids will be produced as you convert basically fish poop into nitrates. And so less water changes and let it sit there. So if you're trying to get to 7, just let, fish get fed and get down there. And then when you go to do a water change, don't do a giant water change. Instead, do like, oh, I'm doing 10% every 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm using plants to manage the waste. And then you can have, whatever your ideal pH is going to be. That's assuming it's out of the tap. If it's maybe just artificially raised from something, work on dialing your setup in a little better. Have I had plants die from running out of space? Yeah, that can happen. Usually it's from shading, like you get a plant that's big and bushy, it's shading out the other one. You can get like Anubias that'll run into glass and then it like turns this way and goes under wood and it's not getting much light. You can get that a little bit, but it's not that big of a problem, I would say. It's mostly not adjusting fertilizer. So you got this big booming tank and you put 2 pumps of Easy Green in every week. And really it might have needed to be like 4 pumps, right? So it runs out of food, not so much out of space. Did a very large water change and I bought driftwood. Yeah, this would be a great one for the forum of like documenting what your starting water is, like out of the tap, where your water is now, everything you've done to make it change. This is kind of like trying to fix someone making a cake by the internet. You're like, well, I just added in too much flour. Okay, well, how about we thin it out with this? Okay, oh no, I added too much of that now. Like, okay, so you're too much of this and too much of that. All right, well, now you got too much and too much. We're going to have to make a double batch. We need to add more butter. We need to add more salt. Oh, you did 3 times the butter. Okay, we're making a 6x batch now. So it's without being able to really kind of walk through the steps, it's going to be really hard. People are going to give you, oh, add more of this, take away some of that, do some of this. And proportions are going to get real out of skew without being able to work it line by line going, okay, here we go. Oh, okay, yep. Maybe we just, you know what? We need to start over. Buy a new cake mix. Yeah, if your tap is 7 and you want to get to 7.5, my answer is don't change it. Just leave it at 7. Like all the fish you're going to want to keep are going to like that. I've kept basically every fish I've ever kept has been at 7 and it's loved it. I mean, short of very few. Who is your biggest competitor? I think for dry goods, I would say Amazon. Because I bet you if we polled, 90% of you have an Amazon account. But it's, for like dry goods, it would be probably Amazon / Chewy's, like probably those two. I don't know that. It's not like they give me a report like, by the way, we're crushing you, Corey, by 82%. Just thought you'd like to know. So we got to do a little bit of guessing, and we get we can look at reports overall of the industry and see some things, but it's not like hyper dialed in for us. As far as like live plants go, our biggest competitors. I'm honestly trying to think. Because, there's people that would be like, oh, it's going to be other YouTubers and stuff. But the reality is, like, YouTubers don't sell that much in comparison to, like, a worldwide hobby / United States-wide hobby. I would wager our biggest competitors, if you grouped up mom and pops and chain stores. Like, it's basically an us versus them. And I think you can see it a little bit, and it's not always 1-for-1, but just sort by reviews. Go look at our competitors and be like, well, how many reviews do they have on plant Y versus them? And same thing for dry goods and that kind of stuff, right? I think that gives you a real, and some companies are just going to be terrible about collecting reviews, so they can be selling 1 billion units. and then not getting reviews because they never asked for them. But even then, people will let you know when they're angry, whether you're asking for a review or not. If they're angry, they'll leave one. So whatever happened to H2O plants? I don't know specifically. I mean, I've seen some things like on Facebook. I believe he's got a few Airbnb rentals. I think they technically still sell plants. Maybe, I'm not sure. I think so though. But yes, last I kind of saw was I haven't really seen him at events. So well, I haven't been to events either. So that doesn't really mean anything. I think he's more into Airbnb type of stuff, but that's all I know. Someone probably knows more than me. All right. My largest plant order to date was the only order that ever took more than 2 days to be delivered. In the extreme cold, the box liner saved the day. Well, that's good. I always dread that when it's like the only time I ever place a big order and all went to crap. But instead, it had a good outcome. The extra care you provide is appreciated. We try really hard. We try to anticipate the problems. We include heat packs. We include liners where needed. And it costs us a lot of money. It's not just like little money like, oh, that liner's $1. Like, oh, the heat pack's $1.50. And you bought a banana plant for $5. Oh, and the banana plant costs us $1.80. Like, oh, plus shipping, like, we lost $3 shipping a banana plant. Awesome. But on the aggregate total, we do okay. So that's what counts is, oh, we shipped, like on a given day we might prep and ship like 800 plants. And over that totality, that's the way we look at it instead of just like one of. I mean, we try to eliminate that and, like encourage, like, well, what if we can encourage them to buy more than one plant? What if we can encourage this to happen? I mean, that's just good business. So we try to do that. Can I try and convince John and Lisa to sell more types of fish? If anything, I would convince them to sell less types of fish. My guess, without talking to them individually, is that proportionally, selling fish is way less profitable than selling dry goods. In that there's maintenance, they got to live, there's lots of troubleshooting, customer service, you got to pick them out. There's, diseases, all of those things go on to it. And so whenever I see someone shipping and doing really well with fish, I know there's a lot of effort that goes into that because you can't do fish well without putting a lot of effort in. And it gets harder and harder and harder to scale that. The example would be if Dean only needs to sell fish to his local store. That's not so bad. If he needed to ship 10,000 times more fish and ship it, he'd have to have 20 employees. And each employee is not going to be a Dean. You can train them as best you can, and maybe they're only ever as good as a Corey, but they're not as good as a Dean. And so usually you'll see quality go down as things expand, ourselves included. If we grow too fast, quality would go down, no doubt. And so there definitely are times in our business where we try and throttle growth. There's times when we go, please buy from us. We really need to grow and make money. We got to support more employees. We got to do this. We really want to launch this light or whatever. And then there's times where, like with COVID, when COVID and the stimulus checks in, we were growing leaps and bounds. It was almost too fast. It was hard to keep up. And we were, working long hours and trying to make sure things were in stock and all of that. And so, but honestly, I would, as I try and tell them, fish is the most difficult business, and I always give them the remark of, I wish you luck. I've never been able to conquer that mountain. I've tried very hard. I know I've got very smart people in my company. I know I've talked to a lot of smart people, and I don't see a lot of people really thriving in that live fish shipping role. And I even believe like an Aquahuna, if they got 10 times more popular, I'm not sure it would be good for them. It's and you've watched lots of big companies buy up other companies to sell and ship fish, and it's a really, really difficult business to ship United States wide, with especially delays right now and weather doing funky things, and all of those things just get more difficult. And it's a live being too. It's not just a plant or a dry good. So, and part of it is I like John and Lisa. So part of it is mental health of like, it's a rough gig to ship that stuff. So, all right. I'm supposed to be wrapping this show up. There's a local fish store being built near my home. What do I think is the best way to approach them about a job? Well, my advice would be, I have no idea what scale. Is this a mom and pop? Is this like the next Petco PetSmart? I would try to feel it out a little bit. I would, just be like, hey, I'm interested in a job. I realize that there's going to be 100 people that apply because everybody wants to work at a pet store, right? But then followed up with, but I'm looking to make this a career. I know X, Y, and Z. Here's why I think I'd be a good fit. If it doesn't work out, hey, that's no problem. The less push you are, the more likely they are to go like, yeah, remember that guy? That guy seemed like he was pretty cool and he'd be decent to work with and all of that. Because there's gonna be 4 million people. Like, I own a betta and 17 hedgehogs. I would love to work here. And, but really they're also, especially if it's kind of more of a mom and pop, one, they probably can't afford you until year 2. And then also, they're going to be working with you day in, day out. If they can't mesh with your personality and you mesh with theirs, it's never going to work. So, sometimes you could be the best possible employee, but, like, for instance, my uncle owns a plumbing company and he is the best plumber and he's done amazing stuff for me. I 100% know I could never work with the guy. I love the dude. I hang out with him. We're good friends. We'll go on vacation together. But the way we work together is so different. We both have really good work ethics. But the way we actually try to mesh together, it's like oil and water coming together. And it just doesn't work. And so you might run into that same scenario with this potential local fish store. It on paper makes sense, should be a home run. But in practice, they just can't work together as a team. So, how many aquariums is too many? So I'm going to answer this question and one more that I keep meaning to address but haven't, and then I'll call it. How many aquariums is too many is the first one in which you no longer are having fun. When you start going, oh, I'm not having fun. That's when it's too many, right? And so a lot of people have been asking, how do you deal with burnout or, basically just burnout? And my answer is you can't. This hobby was no hobby, really. Nothing is ever meant to be, you're going to be infatuated with this for the rest of your life. Like, don't get me wrong. I love my wife. But if I'm with her every day, day in and day out for like a couple of weeks, even like in Hawaii, I'm still burning out. So even in the best scenario, but my wife at 50% of the day, oh man, it's amazing, right? Work, even though I love my job at 50% of the day is amazing. 2 weeks straight without a day off, no sleep, stress, all of that, I hate my job. And aquariums, I think, are very much that. We love them, we love them, we love them, we love them, we love them. We hate them, right? And it's because you're doing all the things. You might research 8 hours a day on what you're going to do. You finally get it. You breed it. You do this. You do that. You do this. You do that, right? And then eventually you're mentally taxed, exhausted. Your bank account took a beating. Your spouse is angry because you took the couch out of the living room. You've gone overboard and you're no longer enjoying it. How do you stop that? The answer is you don't. You go, think of it like your favorite food. You try a new restaurant, you're like, oh my God, that is the best thing I've ever eaten. And then you have it the next day for lunch just because you're a madman. And then you have it like, okay, no, I won't have it tomorrow. But then you go out to dinner and you have it again like 2 days later. And you've eaten it like 4 or 5 times a week for like 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden, No more. Oh, I'm so tired of that. And you might not touch it again for 3 months, right? That's the aquarium hobby. The problem is they're pets and someone's got to take care of them, but step back. Step back from just because you're not spending 10 hours a day watching that fish doesn't mean you don't enjoy fish. Any more so than the day of Christmas, right? Maybe you spend time with family and you drive to grandma's house and you go see your second family and you open presents with your kids and you do presents with your significant other. That doesn't mean you don't love your dog. You were just really busy. You still love dogs and cats and fish and whatever, right? So you just need to go, okay, well, maybe you dial it back from an hour a day to like, okay, I need to like neglect these things and just feed them and dial back my water changes and, figure out maybe you take down 2 tanks, put them in the garage. Dial that hobby back down to, you don't have to dial it down and be like, now I love it. No, that doesn't have to be. It just gives you the breathing room to start craving it again, right? So instead of eating your favorite food 5 times a week, maybe you go down to once a week, or maybe I skipped a couple weeks and now you're craving it again, but you don't need to go back to 5. You just go, yeah, I'm gonna have that once, right? And I don't think it is, how do you prevent burnout? Because most of us do way too much with the hobby. The way to prevent burnout is to have one aquarium. And then you're always like, oh, someday I'll do that. But we know that most of us have 7 or more aquariums. That leads to a lot of maintenance. That leads to a lot of buying fish. That leads to a lot of trips to the fish store. A lot of watching live streams. A lot of watching videos. A lot. Right? And so part of it, if you're burnt out, might be, guess what? Maybe you do step away from Aquarium Co-op. Maybe you do step away from watching lots of YouTube. Maybe you do take down a tank or 2. Maybe you do cut back maintenance a little bit. Maybe you do get rid of some of your fish and lighten the load. So now you're changing water once a month instead of once a week. And you do all of these things knowing that you'll probably get back into it. The reason things that last the test of time, right? Baseball, football, sports basically. If they run it 24/7 every single day of the year, people will burn out. You need that seasonality, that recoup time, to the longing of, I can't wait for the next season to start. I can't wait for, I love this, I missed that, right? You need that part of the hobby, because if it's always unlimited dessert, pretty soon you don't appreciate dessert anymore, right? Because it's always there. You're always eating it. I'm so tired of pumpkin pie, right? So I don't think you can necessarily avoid it. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think instead of I'm burnt out, it doesn't mean you have to get out of the hobby, but it should mean, hey, I should take a look like, why am I not enjoying this? Well, I'm not excited to clean fish poop anymore. Okay, well, change that. Well, I'm not excited with the fish I have anymore. Okay, well, change that. Well, I'm not excited. Start fixing things. Start downsizing. Most people that get out of the hobby, they get back in and they get in with 1 aquarium and they're having a ton of fun. And then maybe they get back to 2. And unfortunately, it is cyclical. And you might get back to 12 aquariums and go, oh, I'm not enjoying it again. But hopefully you can, learn to temper your expectations and what you get out of the hobby. And know that, like, I know that playing ping pong every once in a while, super duper fun. Love it. If I join a professional team, I'm probably going to burn out on it. So I know enough. No, this needs to stay my outlet. It needs, with fish, I know that breeding fish for profit and selling them will only burn me out further. I need to go, oh, I don't care if they breed or they don't breed. I want them to, but they don't need to make 100. They can just make 2 and I'll be happy. And so I think burnout a lot of times is the way we're framing our enjoyment. I used to love this, right? Well, maybe you got to figure out, how do you love it now? Or maybe you love ponds, or maybe you love, shrimp instead of fish, or maybe you love saltwater, whatever it needs to be. But also realize you don't have to love it every single day, all day long. Instead, maybe it's seasonally for you. And I think the one thing I also wanted to touch on is, I think right now you'll see way more burnout than you would in other years, because we as a society have been stuck at home more. So you're more likely to spend more time than you would, right? So if you're stuck at home, maybe you've spent twice as much time in the last 2 years as you would have the 2 years before in the hobby. And you don't know that if you only just got into the hobby, right? You don't know that yet. But then when life returns to normal and you're out and about and doing more things, oh, now I'm more excited to see that dog when I get home. And oh, I'm more excited to do some of these things. So, have I been burned out? Yes. Am I burned out right now? 50-50 or so. I've been stuck at home a long time, basically. But I do know I've been around the cycle of enough times to go, yeah, I'm on the downhill right now. Instead of like, ooh, yeah, I love it. I got some rare fish. Like right now, shopping on Aquabid's not even fun. There's like nothing for sale. So I like to get new fish, I like to breed new fish, I like to go see new things, I like to travel the world. All of those things enhance my hobby. And missing all of those, it's like, you might love a sport, but maybe playing that sport a little bit, maybe buying some of the merchandise, maybe playing in the fantasy league of that sport. All of these things enhance that. And if you take all of that away, just physically watching the game online or on TV, maybe it's not enough anymore. Maybe you miss like, I really want to see 2 games a year in person. All of those things I think are important. And I think all of that does factor into what may or may not be causing burnout for people in the hobby. And I would say, dial it back. We'll see you in 3 or 4 months. Hopefully you're jonesing for it and you'll dive back in, but maybe I won't dive in that hard. Like I remember I got burned out. Let's dive in 50%. I'm only going to eat tacos 3 times a week instead of 7 times a week, right? All right, well, thanks for everybody who hung out. Thanks for new members. Thanks for 8-month members, 19-month members, 40-month, 2-month. I'm going to try to schedule another show, maybe for next Tuesday. Who knows? Right now, as it's penciled in, cargo container would land here and I would unload it on Friday. That being said, as of yesterday, that was going to happen on Wednesday. And by Friday, that might happen on Monday. We're going to try to fit the member-only show that Zenzo and I do on Friday sometime. We can't schedule it yet because the window right now is sometime between 8 and 5 p.m. Well, if it lands here at 5 p.m., I'll be doing it till 8 p.m. and it'll be dark. If I schedule a live stream at 11 a.m. or something, it'll definitely land here at 11 a.m. So we're at the mercy of that. And new video coming out on Sunday, hanging out. I'll probably post something on community page at some point. And I've got a lot of messages and emails to address. So I will see you guys probably next week. If not, and members, if you're a member, I'll see you sometime this week. So thanks for hanging out, closing down my chat. And as always, don't get burned out.